I would like to introduce Chris Halls to you. Chris, come on up. He's going to introduce himself a little bit, but he got started at a competition like this, winning in 2008 the Google Android App Developer Challenge. Yes, exactly. We are.
This one, we're good?
Thanks, Chris.
So I'm Chris Halls. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Life360. If you don't have teenage kids, you probably are not a user of our product, but we're the largest app for families on the market today. We've had over 50 million people use our product. We were the first Android app ever to get venture funding and have raised about $75 million from investors. And we were also 100% UC Berkeley created. I was an undergrad here at Haas, took a business plan competition, or business plan class in this room, literally. This is where the idea was made. I entered the precursor to this competition, the business plan competition, and our company got started in the old Leicester Center incubator, which was in the basement of the Bancroft Hotel and is literally next to the kitchen, so you knew it was noon when you'd smell their bagels cooking. It's not an exaggeration. So it wasn't quite as nice as Skydeck. So I think everyone who's coming of age today has it a little bit easier. I'm also an interesting person to give a talk like this because I'm not yet that 100 millionaire or billionaire. I'm still on second or third base, depending how you count. We've broken out from the noise. We've raised all this money. I've been able to take enough off the table. I don't have to worry about bills anymore, but I'm not like the super big name. So I think I can give a bit more of a nuanced perspective on starting a company because it's been a very, very long slog. I think it's been 7 years now. And as a note to the organizers, I think probably the most authentic speaker would be someone who's done 3 companies in a row. They're on their 4th and they've still failed, because that honestly is, if you took the average statistics, probably what you're up against. So you can see I'm slightly jaded about this whole experience and process, even though it's worked out pretty well. But I do my best to try to talk people out of starting a company because you really can fail for a whole career. So a couple notes on my early days. All those cliches about living off nothing are true. Somehow startups are very glamorous right now, but for my first year, I paid myself $700 a month. I didn't sleep on a couch, but I had some other friends who were still in school at Berkeley, and they were students, and I put a futon in their closet and slept out of that. And it took 2 years to get our seed round together, and we almost ran out of money twice. So it was pretty hard, but one thing that is the honest truth, it never had crossed my mind to quit until like everything was 100% dead. And it's because I think there is some weird sort of inevitability about a lot of people who do companies where what I've seen for the most part is if you ask people like what was so-and-so like when they were a kid, especially people maybe more successful than me, no one was surprised that they went on to start businesses for the most part. Because there is some weird element of it being in your blood. And I think with this glamorization of tech and startups, that is being lost, where it's becoming the cool thing to do. And we are seeing a lot of people who might not be ready for that slog. And although now is probably the best time ever to raise seed funding, it still is very painful. And so right when I graduated Berkeley, as an aside, my job was at Goldman Sachs doing banking, and I can say, having experienced banking, I think being a startup founder is worse. And people always say they ruin their 20s for the man consulting or in finance. And no, I expect worse doing your own company. So that was my rant about why the whole thing's terrible and you probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to switch to trying to be slightly more inspirational and give tangible advice to people who are in a situation like this one, which is exactly what I went through. I think when I was in the B-Plan competition, it was 2008 maybe, I think. And we didn't win, by the way. We got to the finals. So winning is not the end-all, be-all. But a few things. First is when you're doing the real world around a company, planning doesn't matter, but there's no clear path where you put one foot in front of the other and then everything magically works. And I think it's awesome that the business plan competitions have evolved where you're not turning in this massive plan that claims to have like this crystal ball of the future, which in that case, it was, the day I finished the competition was the last day I looked at the business plan, but just realized it's messy. And so in my case, since I came the last job from finance, I spent at least a third of my time on this really intricate financial model that took into account of like depreciation and amortization of our desks. I exaggerate, but almost as stupid as that. And there was no one to tell me how dumb that was. And in fact, I got points for that because I gave this really polished presentation. I think the judges felt pity on me that I had tried so hard, so they better move me to the next round. So how do you avoid that? My second piece of advice would be get a mentor and a good mentor. And I think sometimes people go for the wrong mentors. If you're coming out of business school, you probably worked at successful companies. You probably had highly, highly successful bosses. In my case, people from Goldman were actually my first angel investors too, but they were pretty useless. Now I'm actually reaching back out to my old boss from years ago because we raised our Series C, and our lawyer's like, hey, you need to be ready to go public in a few years if things keep going well. Now they're great. But I think the right mentor at this stage is someone who's been through those exact same things you're going through just in the last few years because they know exactly where you should be putting your time and what's going to move the needle. So even as a hypothetical extreme, if you get Elon Musk as your mentor, I'd say by all means get him because you're going to get your funding done, but does he really know what it's like to be out there on the street begging for money and trying to get a team? And so as the last piece of advice that kind of all one big arc is coming from the student mindset to the work world mindset. It's a big shift, especially if you're coming out from undergrad, which is what I had done, where imagine you get like an A on whatever project and your professor says, where'd you get this? You say, oh, I just copied it. You're going to get expelled from school. But if you're doing your startup, who cares? Disrupt one thing, do the one thing you need to do really well, and every other shortcut you can take, by all means, take it. And that is a shift that you really need to make and be comfortable with. So that's my advice for people who are coming out of this business plan competition. And I'd just like to wrap up by a bit of an anecdote that happened to me from being part of this exact process, and also my thought on what makes most entrepreneurs successful is I really do think that the overwhelming skill is having good luck. And you might say, well, how, luck is by definition luck, but I think what is controllable is putting yourself in the right place in the right time and having persistence and doing the same thing over and over again, even if you've had failure a million times. So maybe not a million, but a lot. So when I did the business plan competition, I'd actually been trying to get the company going for over a year and was not able to raise any money. We'd actually gotten a grant from Google in a really random way, but I couldn't get any money from VCs, and I'd show up to everything, and I just didn't have luck. So I thought I'd enter this, and one connection I made in this competition was to one of the judges, who's Mark Jacobson from O'Reilly Alpha Tech Ventures. I don't know if he's still a judge here, or if he's in this room, because I know he's done it before. If you're here, come say hello. But he invited me to this thing O'Reilly was putting on. It was a startup camp way up in Sebastopol. He's like, oh, I'm having a dinner for people who are getting going, and I got some experienced entrepreneurs going to come and join. So really, all the way to Sebastopol, that doesn't really sound like a good tech event, but I went, and I went. There was this dinner table by 20 people, and I sat down in an empty seat, and I introduced myself to the guy next to me. I said, who are you? I'm Chris. He's like, oh, I'm Evan Williams. Like, what do you do? I have a company called Twitter. And I'd heard of Twitter, but it was still before it was big, and I didn't know anything about tech, so I didn't know he had already sold a company for hundreds of millions, and everyone knew him. And then another guy sat down next to Evan, and he said, oh, hey, Chris, this is a good idea for you to know. His name's Dave. He just started angel investing and doing a fund. He said, hi, I'm Dave McClure. I'm thinking about becoming a VC. What are you up to? And so he thought I was Evan's old buddy and thought, oh, I want to talk to this guy. And he quickly found out that I just met Evan. But at least it got me that undivided attention when he thought I was special. So he actually did from that became an official advisor, and as soon as he started 500 startups, I think we were one of his first 2 or 3 investments ever. and that's how we got the first $1 million in our company. It was all based on that good luck. So with that, to all the contestants here, good luck to you as well.